Seattle, Washington is located in a strip of land between Puget Sound salty waters and Lake Washington's fresh waters. According to the Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development's 2020 census, Seattle has a population of 737,015, with children making up 106,841 of that population, and people of color making up 298,847, or 39% of that population, making it a large and diverse city. Additionally, the census found that there are 345,627 individual households in the city, each with an average size of 2.05. According to the Seattle's Municipal Archive's brief history of the city, Seattle's land and history is deeply connected to the Coast Salish peoples, particularly the Squamish and Duwamish tribes. White settlers arrived in 1951, establishing the town site of New York Alki, later named Seattle, in honor of the Duwamish tribe's leader, South. Early on, the city's growth was mainly fueled by industries such as lumber, coal, fishing, wholesale trade, shipbuilding, and shipping. In the early 20th century, Seattle continued to grow in population, diversification, and infrastructure, particularly after the Alaska-Yukon Pacific Exposition in 1909. World War I led to significant growth in the city's shipbuilding industry, with it amounting to 20% of the national output. But this trend was reversed in the 1920s, and the economy worsened further during the Depression in the 30s. However, World War II brought an economic rebound, and in the post-war period, Boeing saw a massive expansion, with the introduction of the 707 heralding much economic opposition. In the 21st century, the rise of companies such as Starbucks, as well as tech giants Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, brought population and economic growth to the city, and Seattle is now a thriving metropolis. According to the Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development's article on the Seattle 2035 Comprehensive Plan, over the course of Seattle's history, it has followed a number of sustainable development plans, starting with the Seattle Comprehensive Plan. It outlines a 20-year vision for the future of the city, guiding decisions such as job creation and housing based on its 4 core values. First, community. Second, environmental stewardship. Third, economic opportunity and security. And fourth, race and social equity. In 2016, this was updated to the Seattle 2035 Comprehensive Plan with the intention of better addressing challenges such as racial equity, housing costs, access to economic opportunity and education, climate change, and more. According to the Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development's article on the One Seattle Plan in 2022, the One Seattle Plan was adopted as an update to the previous 2035 Comprehensive Plan, with the aim of guiding investment into job opportunities, transportation, parks, utilities, and more to make the city more resilient. In addition to the aforementioned plans, which Seattle adopted to focus on the economic and social aspects of sustainable development, according to the Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development's article on the Climate Action Plan, the Climate Action Plan was adopted in 2013 to focus on the environmental aspect of sustainability, particularly city actions that reduce greenhouse emissions and also support vibrant neighborhoods, economic prosperity, and social equity. Actions are focused on areas of great need and impact, such as road transportation, building energy, and waste. Now that we've looked at the history of Seattle, we'll take a dive into the city's sustainability plan, focusing first on the social and economic factors and then on the environmental factors. Seattle is committed to sustainability both socially and economically. According to the Reducing Emissions section of Seattle's Climate Action Plan, one social initiative that Seattle is working towards is creating complete communities that have everything a person needs located nearby to their houses. This is being done by prioritizing pedestrian movements and planning development in a way that creates urban centers near housing that have all necessities for work and shopping. This pedestrian-focused development means that people can spend less time in a car and more time outdoors, which can benefit their mental health. Not only this, but these new, more complete communities may lead to citizens having a greater sense of communities because they will be shopping at the same local places and going to the same workplaces as their neighbors. This may lead to a better sense of community and a happier, more connected city as a whole. Now let's take a look at an economic initiative that Seattle is embarking on. The Reducing Emissions of Seattle's Climate Action Plan says that the city is implementing a program that pays people over time in exchange for reducing their energy consumption. This would give citizens and business owners more money to spend and therefore boost the economy of Seattle as a whole. Individuals could do their part by lowering their energy consumption and are rewarded with real money that they can use to spend in their local communities. This is one of the many economic initiatives that Seattle is working on that all works towards counteracting climate change and making the city more sustainable as a whole. So now that we've looked at the economic and social actions that Seattle is taking, we'll next take a look at the environmental actions and see how Seattle is becoming more environmentally sustainable. In hopes to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and prepare for the effects of climate change, the 2013 Seattle Climate Action Plan outlines environmental initiatives the city hopes to implement over the next several years. In the reducing emissions section, the city identifies 3 factors that must be addressed: transportation, building energy, and waste. According to the 2008 Seattle Community Inventory, about 40% of greenhouse gas emissions come from cars, trucks, and freight vehicles. To reduce the need for personal vehicles, the city will make improvements to walking and biking infrastructure and public transit to provide green alternatives. While many large cities struggle to keep bikers safe on the roads, the city of Seattle is building a network of bicycle lanes around the city separated from traffic and improving bicycle intersections on busy streets. Furthermore, the city hopes to improve sidewalks and crossings, expand rail lines and bus lanes for electric trolley buses, and encourage the adoption of electric vehicles by increasing access to charging stations. Greenhouse gas emissions also come from residential and commercial buildings. The city hopes to ensure that all current buildings achieve a level of energy efficiency and that any new buildings will be built as efficiently as possible. According to the City of Seattle's official website in 2021, 86% of the power used to run the city came from hydroelectric power. The other 14% came from other renewable sources, making the city's electricity carbon neutral. This is a great accomplishment for the city, and they hope to maintain this carbon neutrality long term. Finally, emissions can also come from waste transport and disposal. The plan stresses that these emissions can be avoided by reducing the amount of waste the city produces, helping companies to create sustainable products, and increasing the amount of waste that is diverted to recycling and composting. The city will make sure you will never have to look far for a recycling or compost bin. These mitigation strategies help to curb greenhouse gas emissions to reduce a major cause of climate change. The 2013 Climate Action Plan also outlines how the city plans to use adaptation strategies to build resilience against the impacts of climate change and protect vulnerable populations in the city of Seattle. Here are just a few actions they plan to implement. To protect natural systems from changing temperatures and rainfall, the city will work to restore parkland, plant trees in areas vulnerable to heat events, and alter the flow of water to protect animal habitats from flooding. Furthermore, the city plans to implement green stormwater infrastructure to help absorb rainwater. When looking at buildings, not only should they meet the current standards set to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also have building designs that allow them to withstand changing climates. One building in Seattle that demonstrates this concept is the Bullitt Center, one of the world's greenest buildings. According to the Bullitt Center website, some of the building's many sustainable features include 100% reliance on captured rainwater, 575 solar panels that generate energy to power the entire building, and exterior window shades that scatter sunlight to maintain interior temperatures. This building represents the future of the city of Seattle and what the city hopes to implement in more buildings around the town. When it comes to sustainability, Seattle goes the extra mile to make sure people of all ages and all incomes have the tools to make sustainable choices. Seattle has done well to provide a comprehensive plan to improve sustainability, but there are a few improvements that could be made in certain areas to further improve sustainability across the city. Firstly, in terms of food systems, more can be done to reduce food waste, which is often an overlooked source of environmental destruction. According to the EPA in 2019, around 66 million tons of food waste was generated in the food retail industry, and about 60% of it was sent to landfills. Any waste that makes it to the landfill means that all energy and resources dedicated to growing/making it are waste, and any negative environmental effect, such as carbon emissions from transport, are all for nothing. Therefore, steps should be made to decrease food waste, which can be done by giving restaurants, cafeterias, hospitals, and any other food serving place financial incentives to reduce food waste by 50%. This would require better tracking, production planning, and partnerships with food banks and other organizations, but would reduce the amount of negative environmental impacts that occur for no reason. Next, there are numerous ways to reduce consumption and waste of non-edible products, and the first thing that should be implemented is mandatory recycling and composting for all households and businesses, with fines being dished out for those who don't comply in properly sorting their waste. Recycling decreases the need to process new natural materials for products, which decreases the amount of emissions and damage to the environment from things like mining and logging. According to the Science Direct, creating recycled paper requires 28 to 70% less energy than creating virgin paper from trees. For this reason, it is important to implement recycling on a city-wide level. On a related note, single-use plastics should also be banned to reduce waste and production emissions. Finally, Seattle's plan seems to be missing some emphasis on another uncommonly acknowledged environmental detriment, which is water pollution. In a highly industrialized city, the water runoff from rain often contains trash, chemicals, or heavy metals that eventually make their way into local water systems. According to the National Resource Defense Council, 1.8 million human deaths were caused by water pollution in 2015. This doesn't even factor in the damage to the environmental wildlife, which is far greater. So for this reason, Seattle must look to increase and expand green architecture by installing rain gardens and bioswales across the city to reduce the destructive impact of water pollution on both the city's people and wildlife.